Welcome to the Stand Like Men podcast. I'm Logan Ingram.
And I'm Daniel Schallenberg.
And today we are here to explore what it means to live out true masculinity. This podcast is about becoming the men that God wants us to be and encouraging y'all to join us along the way.
Yeah, and if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating. If you're not enjoying the show, just mind your own business. But liking and subscribing, is that funny?
Yes.
Okay. Liking and subscribing really helps us to connect with others looking for conversations like we're doing here.
All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, today we are addressing responding versus reacting in any scenario. In your mind, what's the difference between responding versus reacting to something?
So I think with responding, there's a lot more thought that goes into it. Reacting, it is as soon as a stimulus hits you, you don't process it, you just act on it.
Yeah, just
it is
a knee jerk.
It's almost instinctual. Like this is, a knee jerk, like a reflex. You just, as soon as you get hit with something, you immediately do something in return.
You think you can consciously control whether you react or respond?
Yes, I believe it is possible to control how you respond to a situation or stimulus. I'm not great at it, but I'm working to improve. A lot of it comes down to, I would say, self-control.
How do you think you gain a little self-control in a scenario where you would need to react immediately, instinctually, or respond? You self-evaluate.
Yeah.
As soon as you do it, you own up whether it was the wrong thing or the right thing, and then you think back through that scenario and how you might have responded differently. Because it's like when I go to Toastmasters and I say or ah, or I do something weird or something that's just not, it doesn't help the conversation at all or help how my speech is going. Mm-hmm. I could just say, well, it's just a habit. And so I just do it all the time. Well, you have evaluators there mm-hmm. who will tell you, hey, you said, like, I don't know, or 20 times. Well, mm-hmm. I automatically reflect on that and say, okay, well, all right, let me remember when I did that. And okay, here's how maybe I could change that. And so the next time you get ready, you just, it kind of puts it in your subconscious mm-hmm. and you consciously work through it at the end of what you did wrong, how you could improve. And it automatically, I think, starts to rewire your brain. So if you do that, you react inappropriately to something, or it might be not an inappropriate reaction, but responding uncontrolled. There you go. Yeah. If you just do a self-evaluation afterwards and say, here's how I should have handled that different, I think your brain automatically starts to rewire itself. And now that is in your subconscious. So the next time you try to react that way, like it changes.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing you say in order to break the habit, you have to first decide that you're not going to settle for where you're at. You're not going to just like say, well, this is just who I am and this is where I'm at, and so there's nothing I can do to help it. You have to first decide that is not good enough. Like where you're at is you have to grow. You have to make improvements. You have to progress, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. So as an archer, I have had to deal with target panic before. Mm-hmm. So in my shot sequence, I will draw my bow back, start with my bow up a little bit, come down on the target, and as soon as my pin hits that target, it's wham. And it's just like a subconscious thing. Like even if I'm like, gosh, dang it, don't do that again. I do it every time, or I did. And so I had to look at that and not go, okay, well, this is just what I just deal with this now. Like, this is just this is the best it'll ever be. Mm-hmm. No, I have to say, I can do better than that. I can calm myself down. I can change this habit. And so I consciously think of, okay, well, how can I do that? Well, let's just break up my shot sequence, because the shot sequence are just little habits that I form. I draw, I lower, sight pin hits, boom. Well, okay, what if I draw and then come up instead of dropping down? Well, now my brain is starting to rewire itself. It's like, this is unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. Okay, don't shoot yet. Don't shoot. And then it's like, okay, now I can settle in. Mm-hmm. Well, the same thing in a scenario where I might need to respond instead of react. like consciously think of it beforehand. You know, there's scenarios that pop in that are, you know, they're spur of the moment, they're emergencies, whatever. But if we train ourselves on the smaller stuff, we can rewire our habits and how we respond to things, whether we react instinctually or whether we can go, hold on. Okay, now, because a lot of times when I react to something, I allow, if I'm honest with myself, I allow my instinct to take over, my anger, my fear, whatever it is. And I allow that to take over and handle the situation instead of going, stop. Okay, now let's change that habit of just boom, let's fire. It's now, okay, let's go through our shot sequence. Let's take a break. All right, what just happened? Okay, how could it have been avoided? How do I need to respond? Who's involved? You know, and so you break up your shot sequence and change your habits, and you can come to a better conclusion. So to reiterate, practice. Yeah. Practice with the smaller instances where you can allow your brain to take over and lose self-control, or you can calm down. And so that way, when a big situation pops in, it's just now it's automatic where you take a break and you settle in and you get it figured out. You use your brain. I actually have a tattoo, the only one I have. I got it when I was 35, and it's Magnanimus Esto. I believe I'm saying that right. It's Latin and not Greek. And it's above my family crest. And what it means is to be of great mind.
Okay.
And so I look at that and think, well, that means self-control. That means use my brain.
Yeah.
You know, problem solve. Don't just instinctually react and lose self-control. Like if I'm going to be of great mind, I need to think, I need to process, and then come up with a solution from there. That's where I think the difference in response is you actually use your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we fail, because we are imperfect men and we're going to fail. When we fail and when we do react, instead of going away with a defeated attitude of crap, I just screwed up again, and like think back through and say, okay, what did I do? What did I do? Where was the moment that I reacted, and where could I have like stopped myself to respond? I've got a success story about this. Last week, actually, we're leaving church. I'm about to leave church. I walk into the building to fill up my water bottle, and I see my son and another kid who's a couple years younger than him walking towards the back of our little gymnasium area and opening up like the chair, like where our storage closet. And they're like, yeah, it's in this room. And I'm like, what are they getting into? So I'm like, what are y'all looking for? They're like, a ladder. I'm like, and why do you need a ladder? And my son goes, I threw a shoe on the roof. I'm like, say what now? He goes, yeah, we were playing a game and I threw a shoe and it's on the roof. I'm like, and I'm thinking, okay, it's on like the little overhang awning out front. I'm like, okay, like you need to show me where it's at. And he points, it's on the big roof. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me right now. And in the moment I was like annoyed because I was tired. It was a Wednesday night. I'd been working all day. I was just spent. I wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there anymore. And then now I have to find the 12-foot ladder, get it unburied, haul it out, set it up, and then try to get a shoe off the roof. He got it a good ways up there. I mean, this thing, I'm impressed with the throw, I guess, but like the whole time, the worst I got was a heavy sigh. And like he was just offering ways for me to punish him. I said, we're not going to talk about it right now. That's not important. Like, we're just going to get the shoe. I'm not going to behave. Like, I'm not going to make a decision based out of my annoyance right now. And we get the shoe down. It was, everything ended up being fine, but it was highly inconvenient. And one thing that like my wife and I were talking about afterwards, because we're like, this was an accident. You weren't trying to be obstinate. You didn't try to throw the shoe onto the roof. Like you weren't just being a jerk. You were throwing the shoe back to the kid and you released too late and it went up 20 feet and landed on the roof. And everybody was surprised. But after we get it all done, we're like, buddy, you were not trying to like throw the shoe on the roof. You were not trying to be a jerk. You were not trying to be obstinate, or there was no malice in any of this. It truly was an accident. And he was very appreciative. But like after he left, like my wife and I were talking, we're like, yeah, I was annoyed. Yes. But I didn't want to like make a final decision in that moment. I didn't want to decide, like I didn't want to react to this situation. I wanted to take a moment. I knew that there was no immediate threat to anything. So I did have time to think about it. And so I took the time to think about it, and we talked about how we are trying really hard to react out or respond from a place of neutral emotion rather than responding from a place of heightened emotion. Because if we respond in a place of heightened emotion, there's very little thought process happening. It is reactionary rather than responding. So I got a question for you. How do we tell if we're about to react versus respond?
Well, I think any feelings of fear or anger is probably going to amount to a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I said, practice, you going over it and using your mind. Next time something does happen and you accidentally react, just process it.
Mm-hmm.
And then think, okay, next time. And this isn't just a one and done. These are not just one and done things where we just address one thing and oh, great, we're a better man.
Mm-hmm.
No, like the whole respond versus react thing. I brought up fear and anger. Well, you can't just deal with fear and anger by just saying I'm not angry or fearful anymore.
Yeah.
You have to address those, like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about on the last podcast. You've got to address, or 2 podcasts ago, whatever it was. And you've got to address those by, who knows, maybe going to therapy, maybe doing some meditation. I don't know what it is that hopefully you're using all of these things as building blocks and planting seeds,
yeah.
And it's snowballing.
Yeah.
And will snowball into you being a better person. It will snowball into you being able to respond instead of instinctually react to something.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about if you do find yourself reacting to something, it's in the moment, it is not too late to stop and say, hey, I need to take a moment. I am reacting to this rather than responding. I need a moment to process. Then whether it's with your kids, with your wife or spouse, with a coworker, whoever it's with, if you find yourself reacting and saying, I'm reacting out of fear or anger or whatever, and you see yourself in the moment doing this, stop and say, hey, can you give me 10 seconds and let me recollect my thoughts and let me approach this from an unemotional place. Not to say that men shouldn't have emotions or shouldn't deal with them, but to say, I don't want to react out of anger or fear. I want to respond with a clear head to where I am considerate of and conscious of your well-being.
I think that goes to emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Like we have to build on our emotional intelligence, and hopefully it's been from actually communicating with our wives, actually communicating with our children, and learning some self-control. Your emotional intelligence can include just a self-analyzation. Can you stop and do a self-assessment real quick?
Yeah.
Are you able to do that? Okay, well, you can push pause, just like you said.
Yeah.
You don't have to finish it out. Just like with my shot sequence, my brain thinks I gotta finish this. I'm drawn back. I'm ready. Oh my gosh, the pin hit. I've got to finish the sequence.
Yeah.
Another way to break up your shot sequence is to not consciously not pull the trigger too. Just go, let's just stop mid shot. Let's let down. Yeah. That's like one of the hardest things on the planet to do. And that's just shooting a bow. And so doing it mid conversation is really hard.
Oh, yeah.
But you do not have to follow through with that. You can stop, as
Absolutely.
awkward as it is, as weird as it feels. You can hit the brakes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then if you do find yourself like finishing the sequence and like actually finishing the reaction, and then you come to the realization of, oh, I just reacted instead of responding, go talk to the person and apologize. Whoever it is, your child, your wife, your whoever it is, you need to go talk to them and apologize, because that is going to, first of all, it's going to restore your relationship with them, because when you react to something, odds are you've hurt that person. Odds are you've certainly damaged your witness, and they're not willing. They see you as a threat now, at the very least, and potentially they won't. Yeah, when I say like damaged your witness, when you profess Christ, you say that you are trying to live for Him. They see you as a hypocrite now. And so at the very least, you need to go apologize. You need to talk it through and figure it out. And then you need to actually change. Once you apologize, like an apology without action is worthless.
Yep. And that goes to taking responsibility for your actions and your words.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to be able to do that. If you can't do that, I don't know how you can progress, because you got to take responsibility. It's going back to extreme ownership. You've got to own your part of it and assess and figure out, how do I get a little bit better the next time? Like we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
And no one is expected to fix it their first try. No one's expected to be perfect your first time doing it, or your first time trying to do it. It's not going to happen. And so as long as you're working and being conscious of that and saying, I'm going to get better at this, you've got to take responsibility for it. Because if it's not your fault, what are you going to fix?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fix something that's not your fault, even though it
Exactly.
is. But if you don't think it, it's just like a drug addict. They're never going to stop until they're ready.
Yeah.
Until they decide they've had enough and they're ready.
Exactly.
Then they can move forward.
Exactly.
What benefits have you seen from having a conscious response to a scenario? Do you see a difference in your daily life, in work or community?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in more control. Like as I sit here and think about it, like I feel like I am actually in more control, and I feel more comfortable in the decisions I'm making, because I've been doing this for a handful of years, where I've been apologizing when I react for a while now. And then I feel like I'm actually making progress on responding rather than reacting. And as I sit and analyze it, I feel like I'm more comfortable with the decisions that I make, because I think I've trained myself to think about my decisions and my actions rather than just gut reaction, gut punch doing it. And so I feel like any decision that I make, many of the decisions that I'm making right now come from a better place rather than just animalistic, filling a desire. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, I feel more comfortable. I feel like my son and my wife are less hesitant around me. Like they're not as concerned about me. Growing up, I had a temper, like a real bad temper. I'm sure we'll discuss that in more detail later on, but like I had a real bad temper, and it took a long time for me to get over that. But a lot of it, like it was all, I was reacting to stimuli out of anger or fear. And now that I'm holding back on the reaction and like breathing through it and processing the situation and then responding to it, my family feels less threatened by me.
I mean, have you ever felt good when you just react on instinct
No.
Like I don't know of a time where I felt good afterwards. Like generally it's, this whole hurt people stuff. It's like that's your instinct is to do it to somebody else or that's a reaction to whatever's happening. Those people aren't happy. It doesn't make them feel better to do that. Like it doesn't make me feel good when I react out of fear or anger at my kids and yell at them instead of helping them navigate what just happened and let's not do that again or whatever. Or I've never felt good about it. And so I think you feel a lot more complete and a lot better when we start, just like you're talking about. You feel more whole. You feel more centered when you can stop and we can think and have some of that emotional intelligence to slow ourselves down and not hurt the people around us. Because that's generally what the reaction is doing. Is it's hurting someone or something around us.
And it's probably like...
It's not constructive.
No, it's not constructive at all. And at the very least, it's keeping them from trusting you. Because they don't know if you're going... if they have a problem and they're going to talk to you about it, like they don't know if you're going to like help them or if you're just going to tear into them.
Yeah, that's super, super important.
And like, how are we going to be men and to provide for and help people around us if they're scared to come talk to us?
Yeah. Are we being protectors?
Yeah.
And if we're the ones causing, I think you've brought it up. We're the biggest threat to our family.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example. If we're just tearing into them because we're reacting all the time, then, it gets to where they don't want to tell you stuff.
And they're walking on eggshells.
Exactly. And that's not filling our role the way we're supposed to. It's way better. And it teaches them something too. Like with my kids, like if I react, say, what the heck are you doing? You don't do that. And then just get mad and storm off instead of saying, okay, what made you want to do that? Like, were you thinking about the consequences of that? Thinking about how that would make so-and-so feel or how that would affect the other person's life? Like, you didn't think about that, did you? Well, okay. And here's how it could have negatively affected something else that you did that. Okay. Well, when you're feeling that way now, what's something else you could do instead of doing the thing that you did?
Yeah.
Like, there's a ton of learning going on there. Whereas if it's just, what the heck? I can't believe you did that. Like one that I've heard a lot, and I know my wife did, was, you should know better. It's like, well, but I don't.
Yeah.
It's like my 11-year-old is 11. He doesn't know better.
Yeah.
Like just because we assume he does doesn't mean he does.
Yeah.
And so processing it, breaking it down for them too, is part of a response instead of a reaction. They walk away a little better too. I mean, maybe they don't have to listen, and have to really take it to heart right then. But again, we're planting seeds.
Yeah.
And so maybe a piece of what you said will stick with them for next time instead of, well, they can get over just getting yelled at real fast. Cause I know people that's all their parents yelled at them when they did something wrong. What would they keep doing? They just kept doing it.
Yeah.
Because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to, okay, well, that'll be over in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yell at me and then I'll go on about my life. No big deal. Whereas if we explain how this scenario played out instead of, with ourselves or with our families or coworkers or whatever, because I've had scenarios where, there's something at work with a client and I wanted to react. I'd be like, no, like we're not, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you would think this. You'd accuse me of this. You would do this on your own without me or whatever it is. It's like, well, what is that going to do? Oh, it might get me fired and I'm not going to feel good about myself and I'm just going to be angry, but maybe I can salvage this. And I've gotten to witness that quite a few times since I've really decided that reactions don't work, that we've got to stop and respond. I've been able to salvage deals because of that. And what a sense of accomplishment too, especially if something like that. And then as you get older, the The business piece is more immediate gratification where, okay, I saved that deal. Everybody gets paid. We go on, whatever, all a good outcome. Whereas with our kids, maybe it's a little bit of delayed gratification in that. But that comes with emotional intelligence. Like if we're able to handle some delayed gratification, then hopefully we'll see the fruits of our labor and as they get older.
One thing you mentioned that I love is that we have to teach our kids how to respond rather than react, because it's instinctual to react instead of respond. Like
yeah, just watch a kid.
It's a lot easier to yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot easier to react rather than to respond. So it's very important to teach our kids. And one thing I've been trying to do that with my son, and like usually when we're talking about this, I'm like, listen, I want you to be better than me. Like, cause I grew up just reacting to everything and I didn't like sit and process anything. I want you to be a better man than I am now. I want you to like take where I'm at and go further and do more than what I'm capable of doing. But another thing, like when we're reacting to everything in our house, like or even at work or wherever, like when we're reacting to everything, the people around us cannot grow because like we're a threat. And like what we've talked about, just to put a finer point on it, like they can't grow if they don't feel safe. They can't grow if like they have to walk on eggshells around us and they have to be worried about what we're going to do or say because of something that they did or said. Like they live in fear that every facial expression has to be perfect. Everything has to be exactly right, or I'm going to lose my calm. And when I lose my calm and react to things, then they're in danger. So we have to teach our kids, but we need to provide the space for them to feel safe.
Yeah. And we got to lead. Mm-hmm. Like we're supposed to be teaching our kids this. We're supposed to be handling our wives in a specific way that God laid out for us because we're leading. Mm-hmm. We're not just going to be tearing stuff down and reacting and walk away and then act like everybody should be fine just because either that's the way we are or grow up, you're fine. Mm-hmm. But we've got to lead. And so we've got to break it down for them. And we're also leading by example when we do that. Maybe they don't hear what we're saying in the moment, but they might remember one day, or remember maybe they have kids, kid does the same thing and they flash back to, oh, this is how my dad handled it. Mm-hmm. And so we're leading by example also.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because you can't tell the kid, hey, you need to respond if you're you need to be better than me if you're not actually trying to make improvements.
Yeah, we can't do the do as I say, not as I do thing.
It doesn't work.
That is the worst way to do it.
Yeah, it's not going to work. They're going to look at you and go, no, that's a load of bull. I think, okay, so do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I think
that's kind
of comfortable when we're sitting about 30-ish minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Stand Like Men podcast. If you want to continue this conversation, you can hit us up on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, or in the comments of the YouTube section. We also have an email address if you're interested in sending us an email. It's standlikemen@gmail.com.
We welcome any questions, comments. Yeah, this is a conversation that we're hoping to have with everyone. This isn't just me and Daniel sitting here talking. I mean, it is, but we would love input from other people. We would love to help address, because for one thing, we don't have the answers. We've brought it up before. We don't have all the answers. And one thing I've learned from teaching and volunteering to teach classes or whatever at church or devos, whatever it is I learn a ton when I'm teaching. Mm-hmm. And so that's what this is too. Like we don't need to know all the answers, because you send us a question, we get to dive in and learn it and hopefully share what we find with you guys.
I completely agree, because like what we've always said, we are imperfect men trying to be the men that God wants us to be. And we have a lot of growing to do, and we would love any, like, we're in this together. Like, just because we have the podcast doesn't mean that we are the ultimate authority on what masculinity is. So we welcome any conversations or discussions that you want to have. Thanks again for listening, and join us next time.
Our verse is 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14.
Be watchful.
Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong.
Let all that you do be done in love.